What's up, wrestling fans? I'm Digital Doug, and this is the Two Bros Wrestling Show. For a generation of wrestling fans, Hulk Hogan was the ultimate superhero come to life. A 6'8" titan with 24-inch pythons for arms, draped in red and yellow, and greeted by arenas full of cheers. In the 1980s, there was no bigger icon. He was the face of Hulkamania, a cultural phenomenon that transformed pro wrestling from a niche attraction into mainstream entertainment. Yet behind the larger-than-life persona of Hulk Hogan lay the real man, Terry Bollea, whose journey from hero to villain, both inside the ring and out, would make him wrestling's most celebrated and most controversial figure. This is the rise and fall of Hulk Hogan. Terry Bollea's story begins far from the spotlight. Born in 1953 in Augusta, Georgia, but raised in Tampa, Florida, young Terry was a shy, overweight kid who found confidence in two things: music and wrestling. He idolized flamboyant grapplers like Dusty Rhodes and superstar Billy Graham, modeling his future image on their larger-than-life personas. By his early 20s, Bollea was playing bass guitar in a local rock band and studying finance, an unlikely start for a future wrestling hero. But fate intervened one night in 1976. The towering, muscle-bound musician caught the attention of Jack and Gerald Briscoe, wrestling brothers who saw potential in his physique. They introduced him to the local trainer, a no-nonsense former shooter named Hiro Matsuda. Matsuda's training was infamous. On Hogan's very first day in the ring, Matsuda deliberately broke the rookie's leg to test his dedication. It was a brutal initiation, but it forged Bollea's resolve. He returned to training as soon as he healed. 10 weeks later, he was back, impressing Matsuda and earning the right to continue. The message was clear: Hulk Hogan would endure any pain to make it in wrestling. Years later, Hogan recalled that Matsuda's camp was so intense, there were days when I wanted to cry. By 1978, the freshly christened wrestler, initially wrestling as Terry Boulder and even Sterling Golden, began scraping his way up the ranks of wrestling's territorial system. In those days, wrestling was a patchwork of regional promotions, and Bollea paid his dues working in smoky bingo halls and armories across the South for little pay. His big break came in 1979 when he joined Vince McMahon Sr.'s World Wrestling Federation, WWF, in New York. McMahon Sr. gave him the ring name Hulk Hogan, and interestingly, cast the newcomer as a villain. With classy Freddie Blassie as his manager, the early Hogan actually antagonized fans, feuding with babyface champion Bob Backlund. It was a short-lived run, because Hollywood came calling. In 1982, Hogan landed a role as Thunder Lips, a muscled showman boxer. The cameo gave him mainstream exposure and proved Hogan had charisma beyond wrestling. But when Vince Sr. forbade outside ventures, Hogan chose Hollywood over the WWF and was promptly fired. That setback turned into another opportunity. By 1983, Hulk Hogan had become the top star in the American Wrestling Association, AWA, a major Midwest promotion. Fans in the AWA embraced Hogan as a conquering hero, a precursor to Hulkamania. But Hogan's popularity there also created tension. He was drawing huge crowds and selling boatloads of merchandise, yet the AWA's old-school promoter, Verne Gagne, was reluctant to put the world title on him, allegedly over contract and money disputes. Sensing Hogan's drawing power, Vince McMahon Jr., who had recently taken over his father's company, swooped in to sign Hogan back to the WWF in late 1983. McMahon had a grand vision of taking wrestling national, even global, and he knew he'd found his leading man in Hogan. On January 23, 1984, that vision was realized. In Madison Square Garden, Hulk Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik to win his first WWF championship, and Hulkamania was born. He would cup his hand to his ear, inviting the crowd's roar, then tear off his yellow shirt with a primal scream. His mantra to his little Hulkamaniacs, "Train, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins," was repeated in homes across the country. To many parents, he was a rare kind of sports hero, one who urged kids to live clean and believe in themselves. Hulk Hogan's popularity in the mid-1980s was like nothing wrestling had ever seen. The WWF smartly fused wrestling with pop culture, a blend epitomized by the 1985 Rock and Wrestling Connection, which saw Hogan teaming up with MTV, Cyndi Lauper, and even cartoon shows. In March 1985, Vince McMahon gambled everything on the inaugural WrestleMania, a live mega event on closed-circuit TV, the precursor to pay-per-view, that could have bankrupted the company if it failed. To ensure success, Hogan was front and center, paired with celebrity partner Mr. T in the main event against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. The spectacle, complete with Liberace, Muhammad Ali, and the Rockettes, was a smash hit. WrestleMania became an annual pop culture phenomenon and the house that Hogan built. Over the next several years, Hogan headlined 8 of the first 9 WrestleManias, firmly cementing his status as the face of 1980s wrestling. His matches followed a formula fans grew to love. Hogan would endure a villain's beating just when you thought he'd lose. He'd suddenly hulk up, shaking with adrenaline as the crowd went wild, wagging his finger no at the villain. A few punches, the big boot to the face, and then the atomic leg drop would seal the victory every time. It was comic book storytelling come to life, and it worked brilliantly. In 1987, in front of a massive crowd, over 80,000 fans packed Detroit's Pontiac Silverdome, Hogan did the unthinkable. He scooped up the 500-pound Andre and body-slammed him to the mat. The audience erupted in astonishment and joy. It's an image that's been replayed for decades as the climax of the golden age of wrestling. In that era, Hulk Hogan became synonymous with American pop culture. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 1985, the first wrestler ever to do so. He had his own Saturday morning cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, action figures, lunch boxes, even a Saturday Night Live hosting gig. He appeared in movies like No Holds Barred, 1989, and family-friendly flicks, Suburban Commando, Mr. Nanny. Everywhere you looked, Hulkamania was running wild. By 1990, however, the heroic formula was starting to wear thin. The children who had grown up cheering the invincible Hulkster were getting older, and wrestling was beginning to shift. New stars were emerging. Ultimate Warrior, for one, briefly supplanted Hogan as champion in 1990. And a national steroid scandal was casting a shadow over many muscle-bound wrestlers, Hogan included. In 1991, Hogan famously went on the Arsenio Hall show to deny using steroids, but later admitted in court that he had been using them since the 70s. The whiff of scandal tarnished the take your vitamins credibility of his persona. By 1992, after an 8-year run on top, Hogan's star power was diminishing. He took a break from the WWF, and in mid-1993, amid the WWF's attempt to move toward younger, more athletic stars, Hogan quietly left the company. At the time, it felt like the end of an era, the mighty Hulkster slipping away from the spotlight. He had hoped to parlay his fame into an acting career, starring in a cheesy action-adventure TV series called Thunder in Paradise and making more movies. But none of those projects captured the public's imagination the way his wrestling persona had. If the Hulkster's story had ended there, it would have been a respectable fade-out of a '80s hero. But Hulk Hogan's saga was only halfway finished. In 1994, he made a stunning career move by signing with World Championship Wrestling, WCW, the WWF's southern rival, bankrolled by media mogul Ted Turner. WCW at the time was looking for a big attraction to challenge Vince McMahon's dominance, and they got it in Hogan. He debuted in WCW in July 1994 with grand fanfare, even defeating the legendary Ric Flair for the WCW World title in his very first match for the company. Initial ticket sales and buzz were strong. Here was the real Hulk Hogan in a new ring. But something was off. The mid-'90s wrestling audience was changing. They were older, edgier, and they weren't buying the red and yellow superhero routine anymore. By 1995, some crowds were booing Hogan's wholesome act, even though he was supposed to be the hero. The Hulkster had suddenly become a bit of a relic, and WCW was losing ground to a resurgent WWF, which had adopted an edgier Attitude Era style. Then came July 7, 1996, a date that lives in wrestling infamy. WCW's pay-per-view bash at the beach was headlined by a mystery. Two rogue WWF invaders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, calling themselves the Outsiders, were battling WCW's loyalists. The commentators kept wondering who would be the third man to team with the invaders. Mid-match, Hulk Hogan suddenly marched to the ring. Fans thought the cavalry had arrived to save WCW, until Hogan attacked his own allies, dropping the big leg on Randy Savage and embracing the bad guys. The crowd's shocked silence morphed into a roar of boos. Some fans even pelted the ring with garbage, furious at their hero's betrayal. On live TV, an agitated, mean Gene Okerlund confronted Hogan in the ring for answers. Hogan, drenched in the audience's jeers, growled into the mic that the fans could "stick it, brother," and proudly declared the formation of the New World Order of Wrestling. With that, Hulk Hogan had done the unthinkable. After almost 15 years as wrestling's ultimate good guy, he had reinvented himself as the ultimate villain. The heel turn was a master stroke. Now calling himself Hollywood Hogan, he traded his bright colors for black boots, a dyed black beard, and cool villain swagger. Remarkably, this move resurrected Hogan's career for a new generation. Fans hated Hollywood Hogan and loved hating him. His new faction, the NWO, became the hottest act in wrestling. The NWO's rebellious anti-hero vibe, think wrestling meets gangster graffiti, struck a chord in the '90s. Black and white NWO t-shirts flew off shelves. WCW's TV ratings exploded. Monday Nitro, WCW's flagship show, began to beat WWF's Raw in the ratings for 83 consecutive weeks, an era known as the Monday Night War. Hogan was on top of the industry once again, this time as an egomaniacal villain ruling over a cool heel faction. It's hard to overstate how shocking and influential this was. Hogan's turn towards the dark side helped usher in wrestling's most lucrative adult-oriented era, paving the way for stars like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yet true to Hogan's story, trouble eventually followed triumph. By the late '90s, the once groundbreaking NWO storyline spiraled into bloat. Dozens of wrestlers were added to the group, diluting its original magic. Backstage, Hogan's creative control over his matches became notorious. He often used his clout to keep himself in the spotlight and avoid putting others over, even when fans were clamoring for fresh stars. One infamous incident in 1999, dubbed the Finger Poke of Doom, saw Hogan regain the WCW championship from Kevin Nash with a literal poke to Nash's chest, a farcical finish that disgusted many fans and, in hindsight, symbolized WCW's self-inflicted downfall. By early 2001, WCW collapsed financially and was purchased by the WWF. Hogan's second empire had crumbled. After WCW's demise, Hogan eventually made a triumphant return to WWE, formerly WWF, in 2002. Initially, he returned, still portraying the villainous Hollywood Hogan as part of an invading NWO faction. But a funny thing happened. The fans refused to boo him. By this point, enough time had passed that nostalgia for the Hulkamania years was running high. The stage was set at WrestleMania X8 in 2002 for a dream match, Hogan versus The Rock, generation versus generation. In an unforgettable scene, over 68,000 fans in Toronto cheered Hogan, ostensibly the bad guy, with a deafening ovation, literally stomping their feet so hard the building shook. The Rock himself was taken aback by the crowd's adoration for Hogan. Sensing the moment, Hogan hulked up in the match, and the audience lost its mind. Though The Rock won the match, he and Hogan stood together at the end as if in a symbolic passing of the torch. The fans weren't ready to let Hogan go as a hero, and WWE quickly pivoted him back to his beloved babyface persona. In 2002, at age 48, Hogan even snagged one last reign as WWE Champion, a brief nostalgia run. A final tip of the cap to his legacy. Hogan's last full-time run in WWE wound down by 2003, but he wasn't quite finished with the ring. He wrestled intermittently in special attraction matches over the next few years, including a bloody street fight against Vince McMahon himself at WrestleMania 19 in 2003, and a memorable, if bizarre, bout with Shawn Michaels in 2005. By 2005, WWE honored Hogan with induction into its Hall of Fame, with Hollywood icon Sylvester Stallone, Hogan's Rocky III co-star, inducting him. It was a night of celebration, capping off Hogan's storybook career. Or so we thought. Outside the ring, however, the facade of Hogan's perfect life was beginning to crack. The mid-2000s brought reality TV stardom in the VH1 show Hogan Knows Best, which portrayed Hogan as a jovial, protective dad to his teenage kids, Brooke and Nick, and a devoted husband to his wife, Linda. But reality behind the scenes was far from idyllic. In 2007, Hogan's personal life erupted in turmoil. That year, Linda filed for divorce, ending their 24-year marriage, a split that quickly turned ugly in the press. Accusations flew. Linda claimed Hogan had been unfaithful, even alleging an affair with Brooke's close friend, and had a violent temper, claims Hogan denied. The divorce settlement cost Hogan dearly. Linda reportedly received over 70% of the couple's assets, and the once happy Hogan household was fractured for good. Worse, in August 2007, Hogan's 17-year-old son, Nick Bollea, crashed his car in a horrific street racing accident that left his passenger and best friend, John Graziano, permanently brain damaged. Nick spent time in jail for reckless driving, and taped phone calls from jail showed an insensitive side of Hogan that shocked fans. In one call, Hogan mused that perhaps God was punishing Graziano for bad behavior, a remark widely criticized. The Hogan family, once the all-American ideal, became tabloid fodder, an implosion of scandal and tragedy. Then came the scandals that nearly destroyed Hulk Hogan's legacy. In 2012, a secretly recorded sex tape from years earlier was leaked online, showing Hogan with the wife of his friend, a radio DJ known as Bubba the Love Sponge. It was an embarrassing personal betrayal made excruciatingly public. Hogan sued the gossip website Gawker for publishing the tape, seeking $100 million for invasion of privacy. The lawsuit turned into a high-profile battle over freedom of the press and privacy rights. In March 2016, a Florida jury sided with Hogan, awarding him an astonishing $140 million verdict, a decision that bankrupted Gawker Media. Hogan later settled for $31 million, but the message was clear. The case, secretly bankrolled by billionaire Peter Thiel as payback against Gawker, was one of the most consequential legal fights in Internet history. Suddenly, Hulk Hogan was back in headlines, not for body-slamming giants, but for slamming the media. However, an even more damaging revelation was yet to come. During the Gawker lawsuit, in 2015, transcripts of Hogan's private conversations on the sex tape were leaked to the public. What they contained was shocking. Hogan was heard repeatedly using the N-word and making racially offensive remarks while discussing his daughter Brooke's dating life. In one rant, he lamented her seeing a black man and admitted, "I am a racist to a point," among other vile comments. The tapes were from a private moment years earlier, but once they became public, the damage was immediate and severe. Hogan's long, wholesome career of telling kids to treat others with respect evaporated overnight. Fans, colleagues, and media widely condemned his words. Hogan quickly issued a public apology, calling his language unacceptable and pleading, "This is not who I am." But the fallout was unforgiving. WWE severed ties with Hulk Hogan in July 2015. They terminated his contract, scrubbed his name from their website, pulled his merchandise from stores, and even removed him from their Hall of Fame. It was as if Hulk Hogan had been erased from the company he helped build. The hero of Real American had revealed a very ugly side of himself, and the wrestling world recoiled. For the next 3 years, Hogan lived in a kind of exile. He kept a low profile publicly, aside from the court battles. Many of his peers and fans felt deeply betrayed by his words. Some defended him as a product of a different time, while others said his apology rang hollow. In 2018, after repeated apologies and outreach, WWE cautiously reinstated Hogan to the Hall of Fame and brought him back into the fold in a limited capacity. When he showed up backstage to apologize to the locker room, reports say some wrestlers remained skeptical of his sincerity. Hogan made a few on-screen appearances in subsequent years, including a nostalgic NWO reunion and even co-hosting WrestleMania 37 in 2021. But the reception was mixed. The once universally beloved figure now got decidedly lukewarm reactions, a testament to how far his star had fallen for many. Even as Hogan tried to rehabilitate his image, the drumbeat of controversies never stopped completely. In 2020, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame a second time as part of the NWO faction, a nod to his pivotal role as a villain. In his later years, Hogan found new love, marrying Sky Daly in 2022, and pursued business ventures like launching his own beer brand. But public blunders continued. In summer 2024, Hogan appeared at a political rally, giving a full-throated endorsement of his longtime friend, Donald Trump. He even ripped off his shirt on stage in his trademark fashion, while shouting patriotic slogans. To some, it was just the Hulkster being the showman he's always been. To others, given Hogan's past racist remarks, seeing him align with divisive politics was further confirmation of their worst feelings about him. Hulk Hogan, once a hero to all American kids, had by 2024 become a much more polarizing figure. In the end, the tale of Hulk Hogan is a paradox. He was a man who achieved unparalleled fame in a fantastical sport, who became a symbol of triumph, patriotism, and family-friendly entertainment, yet who in his personal life stumbled under the weight of his own fame and flaws. Hogan often blurred the line between the character and the man, He famously exaggerated or fabricated stories about himself, from claiming he was asked to join Metallica to saying he wrestled 400 days in a year. That tendency to self-mythologize made him an amazing entertainer, but perhaps also led Terry Bollea to lose sight of where the fiction ended and reality began. On July 24, 2025, Terry Hulk Hogan Bollea passed away at the age of 71, marking the final end of an era. The tributes that poured in were as conflicted as the man himself. Without Hulk Hogan, many said, pro wrestling might never have become the global spectacle it is today. He was the one who made it mainstream, the immortal Hogan, whose name is synonymous with the sport's boom period. His contributions to wrestling will remain, as one writer put it, as immortal as the Hulk Hogan character. At the same time, his later years remind us that even our heroes have human failings, sometimes very serious ones. Hogan's legacy now prompts tough questions. How do we reconcile the childhood hero with the man who caused so much hurt? Can we celebrate the good he did for wrestling while acknowledging the bad he did to others? In wrestling terminology, Hulk Hogan was both the ultimate babyface and eventually the ultimate heel. Perhaps it's fitting. He lived long enough to play both roles in the ring and in life. Was Hulk Hogan wrestling's greatest icon or its most controversial star? The answer in truth is both. He was the beloved hero who made us all believe in the power of Hulkamania, and he was the fallen idol who reminded us that icons often have feet of clay. His rise was unparalleled, his fall at times self-inflicted, but his impact on popular culture is undeniable. Hulk Hogan's story is the story of professional wrestling itself, the glitz and glory, the scandals and heartbreak, all wrapped up in one larger-than-life individual. And whether you cheer him or boo him, Hulk Hogan will forever be a name you remember, brother.